I packed up a lot of things last night, and I tried to keep it to a minimum, but I know I can cut some things out that aren't really necessary. Like this hat right now today is not necessary. There's even a place here that I can set if I want to. I set my tripod up on there, and I'll see if it works. Let me show you what I brought with me, and then I'll get things set up, and we'll go from there. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, this is what I brought. I had my hat, I brought my water bottle. This is the tripod for my plein air easel, which is here. And I brought the big one. Normally there's a tray here that's magnetized, and I've got it on the inside. And when you open it up, there's this Ziploc with a couple of clips, and I can just clip this along here. There's some trash bags, paper towels, rubber gloves, some painter's tape. There's a sharp tool in there to use with the pastel, and this is just one of those standard chalk holders in case I have some smaller pastels that I need to help me grasp. And then this is just a tool that I might need on my plein air easel. I think that's all it's, oh yeah, that's all that's in there. And then when you open this up, that removes. And then this is the tray that would have been on the outside. And this is a tray that came out of the Mungio 72 that comes in the large wooden box. The tray comes out and it just sits right there. Then I have that kind of padded a little bit, so it's. And then this is a Paul Rubens set, and the bottom of it fits perfect in here. In fact, there's just a little bit of room right there. And I didn't change any of them out. We'll see what I use today so I can get a better understanding. I know I probably brought too many pastels, but you know, that's part of this, is figuring out what works best and what doesn't. I've got my hat just in case I need it. And then I have it like a fanny pack, and it's got a sketchbook in it, a sketchbook watercolor book in it, some more paper towels, some more clips. This is a doggy bag in case I brought a poncho with me, in case he makes a mess. These are hand wipes. And it looks like I have some more painter's tape there. And then in here I have my drawing materials, and I might switch these out somehow because I didn't like digging in here. I like this larger space. But I have a Faber-Castell pit pen, mechanical pencil, jelly roll, and then this is a brush pen on that one. And then also there's a kneaded eraser and some lead in there. I think I need to put like a paper towel or something in there so that background of it is white, and so I can see these better if I continue to use it in that front part. So that's what I brought with me. So I'm gonna get this set up. I thought it would be useful to show you how I'm setting up. So what I did is I just tilted my plein air box. Let me get this. This slides onto here. I don't know if I can do this one-handed. Let me try. So I needed to make sure this was pulled up far enough that this was making a good contact down here, and it was on there. And then I just tighten that. And then I can take this, let me set it up. Set it up right. I got the box here, the level that I wanted, and then I tightened it so it's good and sturdy. And so now I can move it to where I want it and start setting things up. Underneath here is a little hook that you can use for a weight if you need to. I've just got a plastic bag there, repurposed. And then I clip the Ziploc onto this clip locked. I clipped the Ziploc onto the side here, and I've got extra gloves because I'm messy. And then this was sitting in here, but I can just take it and set it to the side. It's not windy today. I could just tack that there, and then this just lifts out of there. And so we've got our pastels ready to go. Another thing, the tray that I pulled out that's normally used as the palette, I could clip these pieces of cardboard to it too. What I did ahead of time, this has a spot where you can put canvases or canvas panels. And what I've done, it's just foam core, and I've put a piece of Bristol vellum onto it. And because I put this tape on there to keep the paper still, it'll just clip right underneath these and not interfere with the work area at all. And then this little tray that covers this, I can just pop that right back in there. And there I go. This is an image of the lovely river that was behind me, and it makes a really loud noise. So I'm going to do a voiceover on the areas that I'm working on the actual piece. I do have the AC running here, so if it makes some background noise, it's bound to not be as loud as the river is. But what I'm showing you here is this little pouch that I made out of shop towels and painter's tape, and I keep extra pastels and small items in it. I start out the piece by using a Pentel pastel to sketch in what I want, and that little pouch provides me a place to put it where it won't get lost. I also did some thumbnail sketches, and this one on the lower left hand side is the one I'm going with, the composition. It shows a tree line off in the distance. It's kind of bluish green, and I really liked it. It has kind of a grayish tone to it, and I make it larger on the actual composition along with one particular tree. So that's what we're going to be working on today. So I'm going to start sketching this out with this Pentel, and it's just sort of placing things where I want it to go. It's not going to be a detailed drawing at all, and I'm being conscious of the composition so that the horizon line is not right in the middle. The main tree, the main focus, is not right in the middle. It's just off a little bit, but it's still a little bit, looking at the video right now, it still looks a little close to it to me. But I'm sketching in, and this line that I just drew, it's not in the right position, so, but it's going to be covered over anyway with other pastels, so it's all good. So I made this tree larger, or I'm sorry, I made it smaller than what it actually is to the eye. And I think I said earlier I made it larger, but I didn't. It's a pretty big tree, so. And there's a line in there again that you don't need. And again, I'm doing this voiceover because there is a river behind me, and when I'm turned around from the camera, you have a hard time hearing me, and you just hear the river roaring, which is a great sound, but. And here I am just sort of drawing in the tree line. And again, I'm being careful not to put it exactly in the center because it'll cut the composition into two pieces, and we don't want that. And that's that hazy bluish gray green trees in the background, way off on the horizon. And then this is the second tree. And I'm trying to get the base of the tree situated so everything is as it should be. They show which is in the foreground, which is in the background. Or, yeah, you know what I mean. Showing some depth here. They're not all lined up. Pardon me. And then there's some patches of grass that are really, really bright green that show up. And so I sort of mark that in as well. And here I'm just sort of looking and making adjustments to where I want the limbs to start coming out. The one on the tree on the left is actually not that low on the tree, but I just wanted it there. So, and there's this telephone pole way off in the distance. You can just barely see, but I decided to include it in case I want to include it in the final piece. Again, all of these marks are going to be covered up with softer pastels, so this doesn't have to be exact. And that's me just marking in the areas where the shadows of the trees are, and the light is coming through the trees onto the grass, making that bright green. And this is just I'm using a Pastel. It's like a neutral color. It's kind of a peachy grayish. So the next thing I'm going to do is lay down all the foundation colors. Here I've got most of the areas marked in. So I'm just blocking in that field that I see off in the background. I'm blocking it in with some yellow ochre. This is a Paul Rubens oil pastel. And I forget here to ignore that one tree there that doesn't exist and I didn't want. But the yellow ochre looks a little intense, too dark of a value, but once I add things on top of it, it'll come together a little bit. Yeah, that middle tree trunk we don't want there. And the end of the pastel was getting a little short, so I'm just tearing off some paper there to give me some more to work with. I really like the Paul Rubens oil pastels. And you'll see I'm not worrying too much. Hey, I got the tree gone. Good job. You see I'm not worrying too much about making things exactly smooth and exactly the right shape. I'm blocking things in really loose. And I know that that yellow ochre is too dark, but I don't have the exact oil pastel to make that color that I need. So I'm pulling out a white here, and this is a good reason to have paper towels on hand, is to clean these off, because the oil pastels and pastels in general get dirty so easily. And here I am just lightening that yellow ochre up with some, it's just a white. I think this is a Paul Rubens oil. I'm 99% sure it's a. Whoop, and it broke, which is not unusual. And I just continue what I'm doing there by lightening all that a little bit. I don't have to get it lighter at this point, but just for my own personal preference, I did so. And on the left hand side there's going to be a little bitty tree, just a wee sprout. And getting some green wiped off. But I know I do the trees a little different when I get to them. This is just blocking it. This is a bright green. I mean, this is a green. And it's too strong, really, for probably what I'm doing. Again, just like the yellow ochre, I'll make adjustments. And I'm just kind of blocking things in again. And I don't know if you can tell, but the white areas on either side of the paper is that foam core that I had attached it to. There's no tape or anything there like I usually do. So I'm just blocking that all in. I don't want to make things, one problem with landscapes and me is I have this, I've heard it referred to as greenitis. There's just so much green. And I have to be conscious of that when I'm doing things. I've got this foam core up too high, in my opinion. It needs to be brought down. And I think I realize it here after a while. And okay, this is me just the sky area. And again, it's too dark. It's like a gray, hazy day, but it's not that dark. But I make adjustments to it. And if there's any jumps like that, like I just had, it's because I had to crop out where I stood in front of the camera. For whatever reason, I may have been searching for something. I may have been checking the camera to make sure it was still in frame. It wasn't any information that is relevant. So I need to start putting in the trees a little bit more. So I find just a generic brown. It's more just kind of, again, to block in the color. The trees are actually, the light is coming from behind, so they're very silhouetted on the tree trunks in particular. So this is just laying down something so that I have something to work with. I wish you could hear the birds in the background. That's the bad thing about me having to do a voiceover. And there I felt like maybe something was crawling on me. Yeah, and this is I'm putting a dark blue. And I think it was, yeah, it's a phthalo. It's a phthalo blue, Paul Rubens, that I'm using. It just clarifies that that's really in the dark. And if I haven't said it before, the idea that value does all the work and color gets the glory, I agree with so much. Because I could leave this tree trunk, this dark blue, and make it work. And what I'm doing with the pastels that I've got is I'm pulling out the ones that I use and I'm setting them at an angle so that I know what ones I'm using on this trip, and then that way I can set them aside and put them to where I can just take them and not take this whole spiel of oil pastels if I don't need to. And here I'm just making some different lines to get some of the branches on this tree. I think some of them stay, some of them don't. They sort of get worked back and forth. I really like doing the sky around the objects. It just gives it a nice playing back and forth visual effect to me, instead of doing the background and working that way. It helps with that impressionistic feel to the piece, to me. And I'm using an olive green here, a little bit of a darker green to get some of these edges of the grass with a little bit of a shadow on there. And it's starting to get a little thick, the oil pastel on the surface, and I like that. I like it when it starts getting kind of mushy and you can play with it some. If you get the wrong color down, or if you get the color down on top of this that isn't working, you can scrape off what's underneath there or what's on there and lay down what you need. And this is just getting some of the shadows. I don't leave them as this olive green for the whole time, but this is, again, it's just blocking it in. I like that olive green color. It's kind of, I don't know, it just has an appeal to me. And I'm looking at the landscape and seeing where things are. I'm looking at the landscape more than I'm looking at the piece that I'm working, because I'm trying to absorb all that information. And here is the little sprig of a tree over on the left-hand side there. At the end of it, I like this left-hand side better than I do the other areas, which is a long way of saying this left side turns out to be my favorite area, because it's just so much looser. But I'll talk about that too when we get to it. And I'm shooting this on Memorial Day. The weatherman was saying it was supposed to be raining all week, and I'm editing this on Friday, and the weatherman was wrong. There were a lot of decent days in between there, or I could have gone back out. But at the time, I thought this was my best chance to get this and get it done for y'all. And I may go back and redo this exact same scene, because the more you redo a scene like this, the more you see, and the looser it can get. Which is a common practice among many artists. Now I want to lay in that tree line, and I don't know why I'm ignoring the sky in the middle there, but I really wish I had put like a little piece of paper, like a little scratch paper, between the paper that I'm using to work on and the foam core, so I could just make some marks and sort of use it as a scratch pad. I think I might do that next time. I'd need to be careful of it not making an impression but on the work, but that could be adapted easily enough. So again, this area on the tree line there is way too dark, and I was just explaining working from large to small. I don't want to start focusing in on anything specific and tiny. I want to get the large shapes in and the large areas before I start worrying about those type things. And here I'm trying to lighten it a little bit. In hindsight, I wish I had made it a little bit grayer looking. So, see, this is another reason to do the same scene more than once. And I'm learning things just by watching me do this, of things I might do a little different, or, I might make some changes. It's given me more time to process it. And that tree line has a nice hue to it, but it's still too intense. It's a nice color, but it's too intense. On its own, it's a nice color, I think. And this is just blocking in the areas where the sunlight was shining through. So I know what areas for sure to. But if you're looking at the greens there, you can see how close to value that tree line is into compared to the colors in the foreground. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be the other way around. So usually I would just start blocking in the leaf area with a green, whatever green I needed to block it in with. But I decided to try something different this time, and I've seen others do it, so I thought I'd try it. It's a coral red from Paul Rubens, and I'm going to lay in the tree area, or sorry, the leaf areas with that coral color, and just do it really loosely. And then when you put the green over this coral, it helps make the leaves sort of pop. But that's the plan anyway. You don't want to work on each individual leaf at this point, or I don't. I'm working from large to small again. So I'm just kind of blocking in the areas where the leaves are in bunches. And I can go back in and put in light areas for the sky to peek through if I want to. That limb right there it's much higher, and I've decided to make the decision to move it smaller. I like that limb. I don't know why, no real reason, just it's a cool limb. And I just continue blocking in those. I am checking behind me. I am in a public place. Um, it's not far from my home, so it's very easy to get too comfortable, and people bring their dogs there, they go fishing. So it's just a reminder to be aware of your surroundings while if you're doing this out in public, just to be on the safe side. There's some leaves that I was explaining. There were some leaves there that come forward, and I'm just making a mental note of that so that I can go back in. And it's not a problem for it to look messy at this point. I'm not I'm not looking at having it a finished piece at this point. I'm gathering the information and putting things down. So at that point, we have the foundation of things down, of the colors that we need. And we have something to work with in each area to adjust and make what we need to do to make it a finished piece eventually. And that's just lightening some of that yellowish grass, that yellow ochreish grass there. I like that this little tree on the left, it has like 3 individual little limbs or trunks coming up, or whatever the technical term is to it. This is not just one trunk on it, it's 3 little lines coming up. But that's hard to put in when you're working with an oil pastel that's not sharpened or it doesn't have a sharp edge. So we'll have to go back in and kind of chisel that area out if we want it more defined. That's me just adding some gray tones to the sky. And I keep looking at that while I'm editing this. I keep looking at that area where I put the green and then the peachy coral on top of it. It just looks like something strange hanging there at this point. It does get remedied. It does get fixed. And I'm getting to where I need to push a little harder, and that having that up higher was really evident to me. So I stopped and I situated it down where it should be and repositioned the camera. Because that easel up high like that, it didn't have enough support. I needed it lower down there. And that light green that I'm putting in there, that field has just little areas of like green intermixed in there. And I don't want that line on that tree line back there to be a clean line. So I'm giving it some kind of a transition there with that green, so it doesn't go that light yellow and then boom, that bluish green. And that's where the sun's coming through a little bit on that grass there. I need to add some bluish into there for the shadows. A cool blue. And this is like a periwinkle blue, sort of a purplish lavender blue. Again, it's Paul Rubens. And there's these weeds that are back there that have kind of a grayish purple hue to them. And I was watching them later on in the day when I was driving around, and I really want to capture that grayish. I couldn't pinpoint it. It's sort of a lavender gray color. But I'm adding this blue, periwinkle blue, sort of, into some of the areas for shadow to make it a little cooler. And when I mixed it with that olive green, it gave an interesting marks in there. I thought it gave interesting marks. I have a lot of work to do on my plein air skills, so hopefully some of you will come along with me for the trip, and hopefully I'll improve on my skills on doing this. And this is just I think this is an emerald green. It looks like a Mungio label on it. Yep. And there was some, I don't know if it's poison ivy or what it was, but there was something growing on the bottom of that tree there. And some of those leaves were really, really dark. Like I said, it was more like it was backlit, even though this was at, I want to say like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And I'm going over those pink areas with this emerald green. And it gives a really nice play, a nice variation there with that pink. I like the idea. I think I need to improve on my skill in that area. And again, I wish you could hear the birds in the background. It just, and I'm still just balking. I'm talking about putting a piece of paper back there like I was just saying a moment ago. It's like a scratch paper. To do little swatches and things on that I might need. So next time I go out, I know to take something just for that. I mean, I could use my sketchbook, but it's just not very, the little sketchbook that I brought with me, I did the thumbnails in, but it's just not very easy to use to lay on top of all the pastels and then try to do it. So I've got all the leaves like about the same color, so I need to give that area some variation. And again, paper towel, cleaning off. I'm not sure what this, it's kind of a yellowish green to give some depth. That little wood thing sticking up there is just like a little post. It's not a plant of any kind. And I'm marking in, making the sunlight areas a little warmer so that you can tell it's sunlight shining through the trees. It's still not warm enough, but it's better. And I'm talking there, my hands are moving because I'm talking about the shadows there that I'm trying to get. And that line that's across by that little post. There's like weeds there, and that's like the bottom of the weed line. Then I went in with some violet. And just trying to cool the shadow areas down a little bit. It's really hard when I'm working to talk at the same time about what I'm doing. It's a little like walking and chewing gum, I guess. My thoughts are more on what I'm working on, and it's hard for me to verbalize what I'm thinking when I'm doing it with the artwork instead, or hopefully I'm doing it with the artwork instead. And I'm just trying to define that tree just a little bit more. I got a darker brownish. Still looks very generic to me as far as, yeah, it's just a brown shape there for the tree trunks. I'm trying to give it a little more definition. And I don't totally obliviate that phthalo blue that I put on the tree trunks. It mixes in with that dark brown. And that's me trying to make, well, I'm bringing it back, some of that yellow ochre, but I'm not really sure why I brought it back that much. It looks like it's too much. It needs to be altered. So I'm finally trying to put in some of the lighter areas of the leaves where the sun's sort of shining through. But it's more of a cool green that I'm using. And I really need a warmer green. But I'm going more for the values here, I guess. And I just started to feel it sprinkling. Putting those light areas in there is helping, I think, even though it is a cool green. You'll notice that one shape that was on the right hand side is gone now too. That blob that was sort of there with that green and peach colored, or the coral. And I'm just trying to block in some of the sky back here in areas. It's getting a little goopy or thick in the tree areas, and I like it when it gets that texture to it. I know I'm weird, but it just, I don't know, it has more, you know, just the texture of it is just, to me, that's when it starts getting really fun. This is a gray tone that I'm using, and I'm trying to bring that tree line down to a lower value. Again, this is a Paul Rubens. It may look like a white there, but it's actually a gray. Pardon me. I'm trying to soften some of those edges with the leaf in the leaf area. I don't know why I can't say leaf area. Leaves. I wanted to find that area a little bit there that I pointed at. There's too much green there, so I'm trying to knock that green back with that yellow ochre, and then I'll lighten the yellow ochre again to make it the value that I need. But it needs built up some there. Every once in a while you'll see a little white thing float by. It's because there's a cottonwood near me. And that's just, I'm using a really small piece of white there to lighten that. And I'm starting to define some of the edges there a bit. You'll notice too, I'm not staying in one area for a long time. I'll move around. That keeps me from getting too tight in one spot also, so that the whole thing works together instead of being sections brought together, if that makes sense. And I need to lighten some of those little leaves there on of the poison ivy or poison oak. And here I'm just giving the texture, or giving the tree a little bit of texture to help keep it from looking flat. And this is a little bit warmer green that I'm using to warm up some of those areas that I had lightened but had put too cool of a green. And I want to break up this greenish area of the leaves I have over here. It looks too solid to me. It looks heavy. It doesn't look, just doesn't look the way I want it to. It doesn't look light and airy. It looks dense and too dense. Not that I want to put every little leaf in there. I'm softening some of the edges and just putting in some sky area in there, so you know something's happening. I'm trying to find the right color of green there, because I don't want to put the cool too much. This is, I want to give the tree trunks more depth than what they have, and I obliterated some of the leaves that were over it, so I'm just bringing some of that out. I have this tool that I can scrape things off with. I think it's actually a pottery tool, and you can use it, I use it anyway, to just scrape off some of the extra oil pastel. And it helps me it's helping me define this limb that's in there. Because, like I said, it's hard to get details with a pastel that isn't sharpened or doesn't have some sort of edge. So what I'm doing is I'm chiseling those limbs out. I'm taking off some of that brown to reveal that grayish color that's behind it. And here I thought it would be a good idea to add some of that texture, some of those marks to the tree trunks. I don't necessarily think it was a very good idea later on, or even right now. That spot there on the second tree from the left down at the bottom, it helped bring out a little highlight that's right there. So there's areas that I do keep that I brought out with that scrape tool. It's all a matter of playing and figuring out what works and going back and forth. I'm trying to define the leaves from that tree line back there because they were too close in value. It was difficult to discern what was leaf and what was that tree line. So I just keep working on the leaves here until I'm a little more satisfied. Give that some definition to that post. What I'm going to do too is I've split this into two because the original video was about 2 hours long. So there is going to be a part 2 of this process. So make sure that if you want to see it, you like and hit the little bell and all that good stuff so you can see when it's uploaded. It's starting to get there, but it's not there yet. But I'm also fighting some sprinkles. I figure if it starts to rain, I've got that hat I could put over it. For some reason I didn't bring an umbrella. I've got one. I've got one in the car. I've got one, the art ones for plein air. And for some reason so I need to be aware of having that with me next time. So I think I'm debating here on how much more work I'm going to do while I'm there in case I do have to suddenly pack everything back up and head to the car. Because there's some definite adjustments that I want to make. So this brings us to the end of part 1. I will pick up here where I'm leaving off in part 2, and you'll see me here start to define the tree area there back in the background. I want to bring in a little bit of light back there to show it has some form, but without giving it too much detail. But just so we know there's some light going on back there. I hope to see you again in part 2.